Yes, guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to this afternoon's live stream. And having been moaning for the last week or so and a little bit disgruntled on the show on the weekend about not a lot going on, today suddenly things are sort of burst into life and there's a lot to get through. We've got a packed show today, updates on Romelu Lukaku's future, the pursuit of Raheem Sterling, interest potentially in re-signing Nathan Ake. But George, there's only one place to start today, and that's with two key members of the board. It's been announced that they will be moving on. Bruce Buck will be stepping down as chairman, and Marina Granovskaia will be moving on at some point soon, maybe before the transfer window ends, maybe not, from her role as kind of chief negotiator of transfers, contracts, etc. So two big pieces in the back room, in the boardroom, etc., are going to be moving on. It looks like Bowley eventually will be bringing in his own people, but mate, that's quite a momentous thing to start with. I'll just bring up on the screen now and go through a little statement that Chelsea said about Bruce Buck, obviously stepping down from the end of the month. He's been there since 2003 as chairman. He's stepping down from his role effective from the 30th of June. So he's going to still remain until the end of this month. He'll continue to support the club as a senior advisor. Bruce Buck goes on to say, I'm proud to have helped Chelsea realise great success on the pitch and make a positive impact in the community. Now it's the right time to step down and let new ownership build on the strong foundations we have in place. The owners have a compelling vision for Chelsea's future, and I look forward to helping them achieve it in this new role alongside our incredible staff, players, coaches, and supporters. Bruce has led Chelsea Football Club to the highest levels of international and domestic football, while also developing one of the most active social responsibility projects in sport, said Todd Bowley, Chelsea Football Club co-controlling owner. We thank Bruce for his service and his commitment to the club. George, obviously, we don't really hear much from Bruce Buck. Realistically, he doesn't tend to say a lot in public. Obviously, he's been at the club since 2003 as chairman. A lot of success has happened under his tenure as chairman. So we have to give him credit for that and what he's done for the club, kind of a long-term associate of Roman Abramovich. But with the new owners coming in, Bowley's going to want his own people in those positions. This kind of seems like the right decisions made. Do you think that? And also, what do you feel about Buck's time at the club? Because as I said, he didn't really say a lot, didn't communicate a lot with the fans.
No, I've had an altercation with Bruce Buck before, a positive one. Yeah, when I sat in the box years and years ago now, and he was sat next to Fabio Capello, who was England manager at the time. And yeah, well, he came across a nice chap. I mean, he was, asking people, what they think about the game beforehand and everything else. He seemed very well-natured. Do I think it's the right decision? Probably, because there's a change, the era is changing, but sometimes you get that mix of people that are well established in their roles to just oversee the transition, which I'm sure this is what this month is about. But I think you're always going to fear, particularly in those higher roles, when new ownership comes in, that they're going to want to bring in their own team. It happens at the bottom with the managers and the backroom staff, and it's going to happen at the top. Well, what can he say when he signs off his Chelsea career? I mean, he's been part of the most successful era in Chelsea's history. So as far as he's concerned, it's job done. I don't remember too many dark moments where Bruce Buck was, at the forefront of it. Obviously, he worked alongside Peter Kenyon for a bit, who was also very successful for his short spell. I'm more gutted about, the other one, which I'm sure you'll get onto, the other departure, but no, fair play to Bruce, but only time will tell whether it's the right decision, because we don't know who's coming into that role.
I mean, to be fair, I've got to be honest, mate. I've not got a problem with the work that Bruce Buck's done, but where I kind of lost a lot of respect for him was over the Super League, because ultimately that decision was down to him. And then he didn't communicate with the fans whatsoever throughout any of the sale process, any of the Super League protest, the collapse of that. Said nothing, just left it to Tuchel and Cech to field all the questions, difficult questions as well. When you're in that position of seniority at Chelsea Football Club, you've got to come out, communicate, speak to the press, speak to the fans, let them know what's going on. So I thought he acted in a cowardly way over that Super League and over kind of during the sale process. No communication from him at all. So I did lose a bit of respect for him in that, because that's probably one of the biggest issues that occurred over his tenure as chairman at the club. And as chairman, you've got to be communicating with the fans, with the public, with the media on big issues. And he was missing, mate. He was missing in action for those big issues, the Super League and obviously throughout the sale period as well. There was nothing from him at all. As I said, left it to Cech and Tuchel to fend the difficult questions, speak to the media, speak to the fans. I thought that was really poor from him. I lost a lot of respect from him. I mean, would you share those views, or do you think that's a little bit harsh?
I mean, if I take it from the other side of the coin, just to level up the argument, I think he was also put in a difficult situation where they didn't know what the Super League was, and he wasn't the only one who made that mistake. They did publicly...
but they did have Liverpool owners apologising publicly. There are other owners that publicly apologised. There was nothing from Buck at all.
Nothing from Buck directly, but I think Chelsea were one of the first to kind of say
pull out,
we're out. And again, as a chairman, I think probably his biggest fear was if we don't join the freight train of this Super League and we get left behind, and it did go ahead, we'd be looking over our shoulder at a completely new level of... I can see, in hindsight, I can see why Chelsea maybe have jumped the gun, but they went into it with no knowledge, and pressed a button under pressure, and subsequently everyone made a mistake on that one. And yes, that will dent his tenure, but that was just to level up the argument. I mean, I agree completely what you're saying, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things throughout his career, I think there's been more positives than there has been negatives.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think for someone that's been here for so long, I do think it's a bit of maybe a slight shame that, to be honest, most fans aren't that arsed that he's going to be stepping down. Like, I think that's a bit of a shame. For someone that's been here from 2003, almost 20 years at the club, the fact that, people aren't that bothered that he's going, are happy to see him go. It's a little bit of a shame, really, for someone that's given that much service, but people are entitled to their views, etc. But he will be stepping down. He'll retain a place as a senior / special advisor. I never understand what these roles really entail, to be perfectly honest. Like, it's almost like some sort of ambassadorial role in a certain way. But I mean, any idea what does a special advisor do? Like, I mean, seriously.
Give special advice.
Well, mate, I don't know what they do. But
sounds like a life coach or something like that. It's just I don't.
I mean, it'll obviously be consulted maybe, or he'll give advice on certain things perhaps. But yeah, I've got realistically absolutely no idea what that entails. No. But mate, in terms of the next chairman, obviously Todd Boehly is believed to be stepping up as the next chairman. Let me just bring this up from Ben Jacobs. Where's that? There we go. Is that Clearlake Boehly always said they would assume control, then make a final decision on Buck. However, sources have made it clear for weeks that if Buck left, Todd Boehly would likely replace him. George, Boehly, obviously the main day-to-day operator of the club, kind of the main face of the bid, kind of acting owner. Well, he's the owner, essentially. Think it's the right choice that he's, the guy that's fronting everything. He steps up as chairman. I mean, to be honest, I haven't got any problems with it at all. We've had Roman, who's been fantastic for this football club, but we didn't really get anything from him. Partly because he wasn't allowed in the country, but also there was little communication from Roman to the fans throughout his tenure. Obviously, he communicated well through the sale, etc., and all those sort of issues. But kind of day-to-day things, week to week, month by month, etc., we didn't really get much from Roman at all. So do you see this as a positive? I personally see it as a positive that we're stepping into a new era where we're going to have a lot more communication and open dialogue from the owners, which can only be a good thing.
It can be, yeah. It can be a good thing, definitely, because we get a more open line of communication, as you said. What I fear is owners perhaps being too invested emotionally when they're at the forefront of those decisions. And I know he's upfronting the money, so he's very much entitled to make those calls. But you do see it a lot where there's a reason and there's something to be said for example, Bruce Buck, that we're talking 20 years down the line, and I haven't had too many fans come out and say, Buck out at any point in his tenure. Or
apart from the Super League, obviously, but yeah.
Apart from that, but there's something to be said for that. That means you're probably doing your job very well if you're going behind closed doors and under the radar where people aren't speaking about you. It's often the owners that are talked about. I mean, you only have to look at the Glazers, for example, and how much stick they've got because they just stick their nose and their fingers in too many pies. And that's my only worry with this one. I'd rather him delegate someone who he trusts to be able to take the job and him take a more holistic overview of the club. But I mean, if he's going to put all that money, towards it, then I feel he's entitled to make that call.
I think there's also with this, I also think there's quite a lot of fear of the unknown, because unless you're kind of an American, like an American Chelsea fan, or you follow American sports quite closely, people don't really know a lot about Todd Boehly. It's kind of like, he's obviously been very successful at the LA Dodgers. I've never watched any baseball or anything like that. But by all accounts, he's dealt with contract negotiations. He's kind of, he's done these senior roles with a lot of responsibility. But I think from a kind of a British-based Chelsea fan, that fear of the unknown with whatever, because you don't know what you're going to get from Todd Boehly in terms of, because we've not seen it before. We don't know his background at the Dodgers. So I think a lot of people feel a little bit perhaps uneasy or not sure about this because it's an unknown quantity in their minds. Whereas, if people have got a better idea of Boehly through what he's done at the Dodgers, then it's kind of a little bit different. I mean, we're moving away from kind of this kind of situation here, mate. Let me just stop sharing that screen and moving on to another departure, which is not, there's no kind of imminent date set on it. Let me just bring this up on the screen now. Matt Law at a Telegraph today reporting this. Where are we? Yeah, there. That's the one. Basically saying that Marina Granovskaia is set to leave Chelsea following Bruce Buck exit. Anticipation among sources is that Granovskaia will go before the transfer window shuts, although the timing of her exit has not been confirmed by Chelsea. Obviously, Marina picked up the Director of the Year award, I think, past season.
Yeah, she did.
Kind of, mate, she divides opinion between Chelsea fans, drives a very hard bargain, often gets us very good deals for outgoing players that perhaps, aren't worth as much as we think, and then we end up getting a lot more for them. Deals with the contracts, etc. She has done some good stuff, but like all directors of football, directors or transfer negotiators, there's going to be some that go horribly wrong. And it's always the ones that go wrong that people tend to remember. I think on the whole, she's done a pretty good job for Chelsea. I think it's going to be one of those that people won't realise how good she was at what she did until she's gone. I think because you kind of only see the end product, you don't see all the work that goes in behind the scenes. Maybe might or might not go before the transfer window shuts. The problem I've got with this is that obviously we've started negotiations with players this summer. She would have been prominent in a lot of those deals. Do we let her finish those deals? Do we let her conclude those? Does someone else take over partway through? It can become a little bit messy, can't it? I mean, from my perspective, I think she should probably have to the end of the window and then move her on, because trying to switch things up in a niche position like that, which you build a lot of trust with other clubs, with agents, etc., of players, to have like a big switch of person in that position to try and conclude transfer deals that someone else has kind of partly started, I think would be a mistake. I think it's fine for her to move on. Long-term associate of Roman. Boehly wants to own people in, no problem with that. But I think it would make sense and it'd be smart to hold on to her until the window's closed.
Yeah, I think she's done a really, really good job at Chelsea. And I completely share your thoughts. I think it's quite messy to do it. It's a strange time to bring it out. I know there's no imminent date set, but a lot of these transfer deals are with built relationships, and she would have done a lot of background work to try and attract those certain players who perhaps are being worked on behind closed doors as we speak. And so it only makes sense for her to run the course of this window and then look to settle someone else in. I do agree. I think it gets a little bit tricky and messy when people take over and they might have a different view or stance on things, and that might, repel some of the players who initially were interested. Particularly if someone comes in like with a bullish approach. I don't know. I'm a bit gutted by this one. I'm not going to lie to you, mate.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gutted, but I think it is a shame. But personally, I think long-term associate of Roman, as I said. And with the new ownership coming in, they're going to want their own people, and these things are to be expected. They're going to have their way of running a club, like people they think are best for the job. And I think a fresh start could kind of benefit everyone, really. But yes, I get your point, mate. She's been a great deal of success at Chelsea, and obviously there's been a few not so good deals, but that's going to happen everywhere, even with the best directors of football. But George, moving kind of on from this, mate. director of football role. It's believed that the Bowley Clear Lake Consortium administration want to bring in a director of football, someone with great experience, etc. How important is it that, because this is a really crucial role, you've seen the success that Liverpool have had directors of football. Obviously, I think his name, I can't remember his name now, Michael Edwards, I think. Someone in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong. Just moved on, left Liverpool at the end of this season, just finished. Directors of football are really important in terms of scouting players, picking out players. This is a really crucial role to get absolutely spot on, considering how poor our transfer policy has been in recent years. We really need someone with a good talent idea, good eye for talent that can help us kind of transform our fortunes in the market. So, George, this is a crucial position to get right.
Yeah, it sets the tone and sets the foundations. They create the framework from top to bottom. Really, they're going to be the ones who drive the vision, whatever that long-term plan is. It's their job to put it into action by, whether Chelsea want to go down the budget route and recruit those players that they can sell on for a profit, or whether it's instant success and they need to be able to find the right profile of player that's going to fit the way Thomas Tuchel wants to play. All those elements together make that such an important role that's been very understated at clubs in years gone by. But like you said, mate, Liverpool's the classic example of, if you have a decent director of football in charge, what can go right.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I mean, we've been linked potentially with the Atletico Madrid director of football possibly coming in. But again, he's supposedly unhappy at Atletico. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think a director of football transfer is as complicated as a player transfer. I think it's a lot smoother than that. But just lastly on this, before we get into a bit of transfer news, mate, Petr Cech, again, a popular figure at the club, I believe technical director. I think he does a lot more than that. But yeah, Bowley and co want him to stay on, but ultimately that's going to be down to him. I think it's important that Cech stays. He identified Edouard Mendy. He's a fan of Tchouameni. He pointed him out. Obviously, the Scott McLachlan, head of scouting, preferred Saul, and actually Tuchel did as well. So he's got to take a bit of an L on that one. But I mean, I think it's really important to me that Cech does stick about, whether it's in a slightly different role than he's currently operating. But George, do you think that's important?
Yeah, just because of the person he is, I think sometimes from a fan's perspective, it's nice to have someone that 100% cares about the club. I'm not saying that, Bowley or the like don't. I don't know those people. I don't know Petr Cech either, but we know that he was a great servant for the club, and it's nice to have a player's and a legend's perspective, and that he's having his influence in the game. Obviously, he had a very, very tough season last season. In that role, like you said, had to come out publicly about the Super League, deal with the fans' business there. He was pretty much Chelsea spokesman for a long time, and probably not a very stress-free role either. But I just have that element of trust and relaxation when Petr Cech's somewhere in the mix in that decision making in the board.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. And ultimately, the decision's going to be up to him, which I think is fair. Hopefully, he does decide to stay on. But yeah, there's some shake-ups coming up in the boardroom. Things are going to be different. I'm really excited for it, just to see kind of where this is going. And it's certainly, some big news, and things are now heating up kind of in the transfer market as well. I mean, we've talked about this guy so much, but the latest news on Romelu Lukaku as he closes in on a return to Inter Milan. A couple of updates to bring you. Where is it? This one. That Ben Jacobs reporting that Romelu Lukaku will get his move back to Inter. Inter will pay a loan fee of 10 million euros plus add-ons. Chelsea did push for the player swap, but Inter refused to include Skriniar, Dumfries or Bastoni. Lautaro Martinez was never a realistic possibility or open to the move. Sources from both clubs say things are close to being finalised, and it's a case of when, not if now. George, this has kind of been dragging on. It looks like this is going to close pretty quickly. This deal for Chelsea has just been an absolute disaster. I mean, we're still paying for Lukaku anyway. The initial money that we spent on the transfer, obviously that much money was never going to be paid all up front in installments. We're still paying for him, and yet he's going to go back on loan. We're going to recoup 10 million. I think that 10 million loan fee plus the add-ons covers his wages. George, this has just been, can you remember a transfer this bad? Not just from Chelsea, but like one that's just ended so badly in general.
Embarrassing, mate. And if anyone in the Chelsea kind of board members are looking for a person with a role, I did say Lukaku wouldn't work. So I could have saved you a few bob there, to be fair, boys. So I can send my CV if you want at any point. Disaster, mate. And again, Inter in the power play position, they can bargain as much as we want. It's more of a merciful attempt just to take this off our hands and just be dealt with it. I don't care how it gets done at this point. Ideally, we wanted the swap, but again, they've got the monopoly. They don't have to swap. We definitely want to get rid. It's clear that we're desperate to get him out. And I think we're just going to have to take a huge loss, whatever it is. And I really hope Chelsea, from a recruitment perspective, learn from this. It's a big loss, and it does show that you don't necessarily have to pay top dollar to get top results. And it shows that nothing is guaranteed in the game of football, which is why we love the game so much. But unfortunately, it's hit Chelsea hard, and we're going to have to go back to the drawing board.
I mean, just to follow on from that, Chelsea are keen to close Romelu Lukaku loan, but sources in Italy say deals being held up by the Inter Milan president Steven Zhang, said to have balked at proposed loan fee /salary, 10 million euros plus cover whole wage. Talks ongoing today. That's according to David Ornstein at The Athletic. Chelsea want to guarantee 10 million euros and expect Inter to cover the full salary of Lukaku. There was optimism that these terms would be accepted, yet Zhang remains to be convinced, and talks will continue today in a bid to resolve the situation. I guess, George, this is just another little hold up in what's been a remarkable saga. Do you think that's something to get ironed out and sorted? I know the president's kind of bulking a little bit of that. It's a lot of money. Like, I think Lukaku's on over 300k a week for a club like Inter with financial difficulties. For essentially one season, 10 mil plus to cover all those wages. That's a lot of outlay for them for one season. I'm not sure if there's an option to buy or an obligation inserted in this loan deal. But I mean, if there's not, this is kind of just pushing this issue just a year down the line, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it definitely needs to be solved this window.
I think it will be.
Yeah, and of course, it's going to be elongated just to the fact of, I don't think Inter are going to be prepared to pay his full wage package. We're going to have to come down on that. And again, I think it'll take a lot of back and forth, but eventually I think it will get resolved. And hopefully, ultimately Chelsea have made a massive loss. So it's just now trying to find the best solution where we don't lose any more, which is very hard to take, I have to say. But,
I mean, I've got to be honest, I'm actually gutted at how this has turned out. I mean, as you said, I'm sure you and maybe a small minority of other Chelsea fans perhaps didn't think this would work or it wasn't right. But ultimately, the vast majority of the fan base are really excited by this. Lukaku, whatever people think, is still like a top-class centre forward. He scores a lot of goals. He's got a great goal-scoring record. We thought this would really work, and it's gone worse than anyone could have expected at all. And I know we've not had great success with number 9s in the past, spending big money on transfers. A lot of them haven't worked out. But I really thought this potentially might be different. But I think this, for me, could be the turning point with Chelsea and signing players for big money, like just based on a reputation rather than thinking about how they actually fit into the system, how they fit into the club. I think this could be a potential turning point in that, and could see perhaps, I'm not saying we're not going to spend big money on players, because we will, but I think there's going to be a lot more thought going into it. But that Romelu Lukaku thing should be tied up. But it's important that this Lukaku deal does get tied up, because it's very much impacts any incomings, because the deal for Raheem Sterling, which we'll come on to now, can really be accelerated once Romelu Lukaku has exited. And I think, George, you think that's the right decision that Chelsea get Lukaku out first before focusing on any incomings? Because this is a really important guy to get out of the building.
Yeah, I mean, he's still our most expensive player. Certainly will be on the wage list as well. So I think it's important to get iron out the outgoing, that's certainly the main position, and then look to replace and re-energize the position. But we need to get that tied up first.
Yeah, and we're going to move on to Raheem Sterling, because things seem to have accelerated a little bit in that regard as well. Ben Jacobs again Chelsea and Manchester City are also significantly apart on a fee for Sterling. City ideally want close to 60 mil, but sources close to the club admit they may settle for a similar fee to Gabriel Jesus. That would put Sterling on the market for around 45 millions with add-ons on top. Lots of negotiations to be done on fee and with Sterling, but there is a willingness on all sides. Sterling hasn't yet made any final decision, but is thought to be very open to a move to Stamford Bridge if a fee can be agreed. George, what do you think the right sort of fee for Sterling would be? Obviously, a year left on the contract. DiMarzio, an Italian outlet, were reporting that Chelsea, think they could potentially get him for 35 mil. I believe that's kind of based on what Chelsea looking at it. Well, what Sadio Mane gone to Bayern Munich for. But then the kind of the caveat to that is that that's a different league for starters. And it's not a direct rival to Liverpool. The only time it would be a direct rival is if they get drawn together in the Champions League, which would be 2 games or 1 game if it's a final. Whereas from City perspective, you're selling to a direct Premier League, like a direct rival for the Premier League title. I'm not saying they won't sell to Chelsea. They would. But that kind of, I guess, drives the price up a little bit. He's 2 years younger than Sadio Mane as well, 27 years of age. He's won 4 Premier League titles in the last 6 years. Kind of in the prime years of his career. For me, I said to you over text, I thought around 45 millions with add-ons would be about right. Do you think we can get him for that price, or do you think City are going to play hardball on this?
Oh, there's no doubt they'll play hardball because they don't, like you said, they don't want to sell to a rival. You're going to have to pay a premium to make a sideways move, particularly in the same league. Again, alluding to his age, yes, he's got 1 year left on his contract, but he's 27. He's got a lot to offer still. And the way I look at it, I said to you, again, I replied by text. I said if we could somehow meet in the middle, ideal. But I think he's better than Jack Grealish. And if Jack Grealish costs 100 million, then by all means, City have the right to value him at probably the 60 million pound mark, which, again, steep, but I think I still do think he's one of the best in his position in Europe. So I honestly think it's worth it. But yeah, they're going to play hardball, and hopefully we can meet in the middle. I mean, the early reports were suggesting the 35 million pound mark plus add-ons, which would have been an absolute steal. I don't think it's going to be that low. I think we're going to be looking around the 40 to 60 mark.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I mean, just a word on this, Fabrizio Romano, Sterling, Chelsea, top target as reported last Tuesday. Man City want around 55, 60 million euros. Chelsea approached with a 25 million plus add-ons, which was obviously turned down.
Ridiculous.
They'll go back with a new bid soon, as Man City are open to letting him go. City want to recoup about between 100 and 110 million euros from Jesus and Sterling. George, we've seen it with Bayern Munich, going in with a derisory offer of, I think, 20 or 21 million pounds opening bid for Sadio Mane. Why do clubs go in with such low initial offers, do you think, that are obviously going to get turned away? I mean, 25 million plus add-ons. Why do we do that? I mean, it's kind of I guess it's a ploy to try and get negotiations moving, but that's never going to be accepted.
Honestly, it baffles me. I don't know what these people are thinking. Like, they're never going to accept it. So what is the point in wasting your time? I get that in business, yes, you probably want to start low, because if you set the price too high and you end up negotiating upwards, you're in a bad position, aren't you? If you start at 40, you then can't go lower. I get that, but let's be real. They're never going to accept. I mean, if we go in a couple of days' time and say 27 or 30, I'm going to be like, are you kidding me? I mean, you can't. I really would like to know who set that initial bid off, and if so, they need to sack, because that was never going to work. It's just pointless. What is the point?
It is pointless. But I mean, I'm confident that a deal can be done for around the 45 million pound mark with add-ons. I think that's a fair price for him. Maybe taking that total deal to maybe 50, 55 million, including the add-ons. I think City would accept that. I think they'll definitely get 100, 110 million from him and Jesus combined. Do you think, George, with City being prepared to sell these two players, I know they're in the last year of their contract, but Todd Bowley was saying in an interview that kind of financial fair play is pinching a little bit hard now. Do you think City could potentially be feeling maybe a couple of effects of that and need to get rid of a couple of players as well? Because, I mean, Sterling and Jesus, whilst not on top wages at City, it's still going to be big wages. So do you think that could be a factor into why they're looking to get rid of these guys?
Yeah, because there's still two players that you probably feel in City's squad they've got something to offer. I mean, you'd probably prefer not to sell them and keep. I can't think of too many players that City could perhaps replace them with. Not that they need replacing. I mean, they're very top heavy in that department anyway. But yeah, I mean, there is a feeling that the books need to be balanced. I mean, you say that with a pinch of salt because City have then gone and spent, they'll go and spend ridiculous amounts on someone else. I mean, I think their back four costs over £500 million. So it's just, we're talking outrageous money. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely an element of, I can't even use the word financial fair play. There's nothing financially fair play about what the top four clubs do in comparison to the others. But I get that some of that fees goes back into the league and everything else. So potentially, mate, potentially, but I can't use FFP and not smile, really, to be honest with you.
I've just got to say, I've been a little bit torn on this deal. I've actually kind of swung around and I'm warming to it a bit more. I think at 27 years of age, phenomenal record, got the prime years of his career ahead. He scores goals. He's not the most creative, but he's a lot better, I'd say, in terms of goal scoring record and assists record than anyone else we've got at the club. As I said, prime age, prime years of his career ahead of him. There is a lot to like about it. I think he's obviously keen for it. So I kind of have warmed to this one a little bit more than initially thought. But it is funny how someone who's an established England international has got a phenomenal goal scoring record in the Premier League, has done really well for City as well, has improved a lot under Pep Guardiola, and yet there's a lot of division over whether this is a good deal or not. It's weird how things work out, isn't it, George, in terms of like this realistically, when you look at Sterling's pedigree and track record and his career so far, this should be a no-brainer. Everyone should be fully on board with this, but it's just not the case.
I don't get it, mate, because I think there's a bit of it goes deeper. I think there's like a likability factor. I think a lot of people classify him as a bit of a cheater, hogs the ball too much, perhaps doesn't do enough with his potential. Maybe that's incredibly harsh, but there's obviously for whatever reason, there's a reason why Guardiola decided to bring in Jack Grealish and challenge that position. There's a reason why Sterling isn't like a Kevin De Bruyne where he starts every game. I mean, that could be manager preference, of course, and the way they play. But for me, mate, it's a no-brainer. I think he's great. I think he brings a level of excitement, the pace as well that we don't lack. But I think certainly in terms of transitional play and counter-attacks, we need someone like him to just run at players. And his goal record is phenomenal in the Premier League. I know he misses a lot of chances, but he also creates a lot. And comes from that area as well. I think he's more from the Arsenal side of things, but I'm not sure of that. Don't quote me on that. But I think personally it's a really I've been excited by this move, and I think it's a step in the right direction. So I would like to see this one over the line.
Yeah, I think this one will get done at some point. I think there'll be, once Lukaku's done, things will speed up with the Raheem Sterling situation. But yeah, no, it's definitely one that I think is quite exciting, and and the most important thing for me is it's definitely an upgrade on what we've got, and I think it improves the squad, and that's all you can want. Plus, it's a reasonable price for a top player in the prime years of his career ahead of him. Plus, he's got Premier League experience and know-how. That's so important as well. It really is. I know he'll have to settle into a new team, slightly different way of playing, but he's got years of experience in the Premier League, which these are all big pluses. So, yeah, hopefully there'll be some more developments in this deal down the line. Mate, I know you've got to shoot in a sec. Just let me know when you need to.
No, I can stick for like a couple of minutes I've got.
Yeah, perfect, mate. Let's do it. Mate, another interesting one, again, involves a wide player. It's been obviously Leeds United's Rafinha. Fabrizio Romano reporting on the Rafinha situation. Barcelona have agreed personal terms with Rafinha, but no agreement on fee with Leeds. I don't even know how Barcelona are playing for all these players, or they haven't even been able to announce Christensen or Kessie yet. Arsenal have been in direct negotiations with Leeds. Interested since March. Both Chelsea and Tottenham have been in contact too. Fee could be around 65/75 million. I presume that means euros. George, Rafinha, I'm actually a fan of his. I think he's an exciting player. I think he's had a very good season for Leeds. He did also in his first season. But I think his preference is to go to Barcelona. I don't know how they're going to afford it, but they want Lewandowski as well. I don't know what's going on there. But I mean, I could see him potentially at Arsenal. But George, does Rafinha excite you? I know there's this might not even happen at all, and it's a lot of money. But do you think that's someone that Chelsea should be pursuing?
Yeah, I mean, it excites me. I mean, not for that figure.
No,
not for me. And the way he plays, I can see him at Barcelona. I mean, that's just a perfect fit for me. I'd be astonished if he went anywhere else but Barcelona. I think it'd be a better move for him, to be honest, than to join Chelsea. I don't see why we wouldn't be interested in a player like Rafinha. I think he's had an outstanding season, but again, we probably need a bit more evidence than just one season to rate it on. And again, I think that's such an inflated price where, if you're looking at someone like, I don't know, someone as established as we've just discussed, someone like a Sterling that you can get for cheaper. I don't know. I know the different positions, but for me,
yeah, I'm a fan of Rafinha's, but again, for that price, I think there's potentially better options on the market for Chelsea. I think he'd suit the team well, and if he doesn't go to Barcelona, then I can't envision him staying at Leeds. So I'm not really sure if he's a Conte Spurs type of player. So it could realistically end up being Arsenal or Chelsea. I mean, I'm sure he's got other suitors in Europe potentially. But yeah, I just think at that price, Leeds are going to not find many takers. I think they're going to have to lower that to around the 55 million euros mark, in my opinion, on that one. But again, George, mate, things with Richarlison seem to be not heating up, but there's a little bit more substance to those reports that Richarlison, with 2 years left on his contract, Everton would consider selling him this summer for around 50 million. We discussed it on the show on Saturday. We are sort of fans of this. Do you think, would Richarlison, in your opinion, for 50 million pounds, if that's what it would take, do you think that would represent good business?
It's a hard question to answer until he's delivered the goods, isn't it? Again, it's one that I like because it's under the radar. I think Chelsea need to take a different tact in the transfer market this year. Go Premier League proven. He is that. He is exciting. He's a bit bullish. Can clearly finish. Can clearly rise to the top occasion. Needs a new challenge. Bit more physical up top, where I feel that we've been a bit light-handed. I know Lukaku is obviously a complete contradiction of that because he is exactly the type of bullish striker that you want. Got pace. It's something that does excite me because I think people are missing a trick with Richarlison and potentially not as interested as perhaps we should be. But again, whether it's good business, but that's the price you're going to play. Again, Everton, their best player, they're going to inflate the price because they've got to get as much as they can to recoup and strengthen that area that they're going to lose. So excited by this one.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to sign a new contract. So if Everton want to maximise the amount of money they're going to get for him, they would have to sell this summer. Otherwise, next summer, with a year left, they're not going to get anywhere near as much for him. So I think that's one to kind of have a look at. Mate, very briefly before you go, I just want to get a quick thoughts on an interesting one. We spoke about this yesterday, I think it was. Wasn't really expecting this to come out at all, to be honest. Chelsea interested in re-signing Manchester City defender Nathan Ake. Tuchel was a big fan of the player. It is seen as another situation to keep an eye on. George, what were your first thoughts when you saw this one? Because it took me completely by surprise. Obviously, Ake came through the academy at Chelsea, made a few appearances, didn't really get that much of a chance. He was a little bit like Ethan Ampadu in a sense. Could play centre-back, could play left-back, could also play holding midfield player, went to Bournemouth. I was surprised that Manchester City paid £40 million for him. He's played a bit at City, not as much as he would have wanted to, for sure. But I don't think City kind of had plans for him to be a regular first-team player. It's more kind of a squad filler. What are your thoughts on those links? Because I was surprised by them, but I'm not totally against it, even though there's some degree of perhaps embarrassment, or I don't know if that's the right word, in bringing someone back that you initially let go.
Yeah, I mean, if you just count the amount of players that we bloody re-signed that we've let go, it does get to the level of embarrassment, to be honest. It's one that's quite a safe option. I wouldn't be blown away by it, but like you said, he's versatile. He's still got a point to prove. There's still a great player in there. Question is it a bit of a downgrade considering we've lost Christensen and Rudiger? I wouldn't say he's any well, he's certainly not better than Rudiger, but is he any better than Christensen? He's got a lot of mistakes in him,
Well, I mean, it's
which
better
I've
than what
seen at
we've
City
currently
as well.
got, though, isn't it?
Better than what we've currently got. And that's why I think it's a safe option, because he can fit straight in. He knows, obviously, the system at Chelsea, okay, new manager, but he knows, he can fit straight in. He knows the training ground, everything else, probably still knows a few of the staff there. I actually liked him when he was at Chelsea, but again, it was just an era where he was at the club where it was very difficult for for players of the youth team or whatever to come in and play. I think now there's a bit of change of tact, particularly after the Frank Lampard bit, where you have got opportunities. And he's obviously an established player now. He's not young by any stretch. So I'm still in the middle with this one. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. To be honest, mate, I don't think it will happen. I mean, I don't think City are looking to sell that many players, are they? I don't really know. It just seems that we seems to be linked with quite a lot of Manchester City players. I mean, maybe they might be open to selling him. I'm really not sure, but I guess it's one to look out for. But in terms of Ake, I guess he knows Chelsea. He'd be comfortable in multiple positions across that back line, probably in a 4 and a 3 and at left back, which we need backup for. I mean, I wouldn't be totally against it, but George, would you imagine that City would want to, minimum get their £40 million back that they spent on him a few years ago? You'd probably argue that this could be 45 or 50 mil, which in my opinion wouldn't be representative value for money.
No, we need value for money on this one. My last point on that is went for a big price, but didn't make that step up. And I think if he was to come back to Chelsea, this is where we'd need to make a bit of a, not a profit, but there's got to be a limit to the transfer. Particularly as the ones we've just discussed in Sterling and Richarlison are going to be inflated. I think this is one where we've got to feel, right, it's got to be better for our interests financially. Whether that can happen, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, mate, I'm not sure on this one either. It's definitely one to keep an eye on, but ultimately, I can't see this one happening. In my opinion, I just don't think City need to get rid of that many players. And I think, to be honest, for the role he does in the City squad, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they could find other people, maybe that could do the same job. But I mean, if Ake's happy there, then I don't see why City would be in a massive rush to move him on. Another weird, slightly strange one that I sorted. I don't know how true or accurate this is. But Simon Phillips has been very accurate with a lot of things recently. But according to him, a new name for the centre-back list is Aymeric Laporte. He's been told now by 3 of his close sources that he's a name Chelsea have been considering. He's a defender who has been brought up in recent conversations. George just continues the Manchester City theme. I don't really know what's going on with this City theme and Chelsea this summer, but again, don't believe everything you read. Maybe considering. I can't see this one happening at all. But just in general, George, Aymeric Laporte, I rate him. I think he's a really good defender. Obviously been overshadowed by Ruben Diaz. I think he'd work well in Chelsea's defensive system, but I mean, I don't know where this information's coming from, but I mean, I cannot see this happening in a million years.
No, I think this is bollocks news, isn't it? This has got no substance to it, other than the fact that he's, like you said, Diaz has taken his role. But love him as a player, mate. I think he's top draw. It's just, he's at the fact that he's at one of the best clubs in Europe. So being world class sometimes isn't enough. He's got an even better player in that position that he plays, but. No, I can't see anything. I can't see him being in a Chelsea shirt at all. I can't see it.
No, mate, I really can't see it either. I mean, it's just, it's just a bit of a nonsense thing, isn't it? It really isn't, mate. Just before we round out, I just want to very briefly bring up something new that Ben Jacobs has just tweeted out. I know you've got to shoot. This will take like 60 seconds. Let me just quickly bring it up. This one here. Yeah. Ben Jacobs is just to clarify, since a fair few have asked, Todd Boehly is not trying to assume control over everything. Becoming chair was a long-standing plan if Buck left. It's a natural fit, and he's flanked by Jonathan Goldstein, who has excellent football and business knowledge. The pair work together extremely well and closely at Kane, where Goldstein is CEO, and Buck remaining on as an advisor further helps the transition. Boehly is likely to be a very visible, open and proactive chair, and Goldstein has a diverse skill set and will also lead on the redevelopment plans. Between the two, there'll be a daily club presence, so it's not correct to assume Bowley as chair will have too many other commitments or be distant. And Granovskaia's departing is not totally unexpected. Unlike Buck, she was considering her future regardless of who replaced Abramovich, and despite being admired by Clearlake Bowley, not only do clubs work multiple windows ahead, but CFC won't let her go without a full handover. Clearlake Bowley sources have always said that they would come in, assess the club and its staff, then determine which senior executives were the right fit based on their own strategy and individual feedback. That's exactly what they are doing. So kind of what we said at the top of the show, George, they've obviously got a clear plan. It's going to be good that, we're going to have a more hands-on, more proactive, open owner. So yes, it's kind of good to hear that. And everything so far from the Bowley Clearlake administration seems to be very positive. Things seem to be, they've also been working very hard behind the scenes. And now things are kind of gathering pace, gathering momentum. I think it's a really exciting summer window ahead, behind the scenes and obviously on the pitch with transfers, incomings and outgoings. So I think there's plenty to look forward to as a Chelsea fan and Chelsea supporter. So yeah, lots to get stuck into over the weeks ahead, hopefully. But yeah, guys, it seems like a good point to round out. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for getting involved in the chat. As always, really appreciate all your comments and support in there. Please do smash a like on this stream and please do click that subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps us out. We're on the road to 1K. Every subscriber helps. So please do click that subscribe button, guys. Thanks so much for your time. George, pleasure as always, mate. Thanks for joining me. Yes, guys, stay tuned for some more updates over the week. We'll be back in the next couple of days or so with some more news. So until then, take care and up the